Welcome to the Real Estate Roundtable. I'm Eric Blue. I'm your host. So we got a great program for you tonight. We've got the tax deferred double header. We've got both 1031 tax deferred exchanges and Delaware Statutory Trust. So we're really excited. In fact, we're going to have a shorter first half than normal because we have two presenters for the second half tonight. So thanks to Dwight, we have internet in here now. So we're back to Facebook Living all the Real Estate Roundtable meetups. So that's going out on the Real Estate Roundtable Facebook group right now. Also, we love you guys making deals. So if you feel the need to talk, please take it out in the lobby so the people that want to hear the content can hear it. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to have a short first half, and then we'll take a 15-minute break while we get our speakers ready. Make sure you go get a drink and use the restroom if you need to. Be a great time to network as well. So all the slides tonight will be presented to you. If you checked in and gave us your email address, we'll be emailing out all the slides from the presentations tonight, as well as the links to the video feeds. Email list, so when you came in, you gave us your email, so that's how we're going to contact you. We also share that with everybody here tonight. If there's some reason you don't want your email shared, just let me know, and I'll make sure you get taken off the list. But the whole idea to coming to these meetups is to connect with everybody, so we hope you'll participate in that. Real Estate Roundtable. Who wants to read the description for a Starbucks card?
No shame. Starbucks card?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, heck yeah.
You probably know this by heart.
Real Estate Roundtable is a community of like-minded real estate investors who meet on a regular basis to educate, motivate, and inspire each other to achieve financial freedom through real estate investing. We share stories, challenges, and tips about real estate investing. Instead of a traditional networking, this group is about really getting to know, like, and trust each other to foster lasting real estate investing partnerships. We crowdsource real estate knowledge, evaluate real deals, and learn real estate investment strategies from each other. It's a place to meet new folks, cultivate new business relationships, and find partners to do real estate deals.
So I'm glad Laurel read that. I can't think of anybody better who personifies that than Laurel. She is such a value asset to our real estate community, and I'm glad she supports the Real Estate Roundtable. And thank you for reading that. And then enjoy your latte. So for you those who don't know, we've now added a multifamily night. So the third Monday of the month is a joint venture between the Real Estate Roundtable and the Multifamily University. We had Neil Bauer here last Monday night to a packed house. It was some of the best content on multifamily. Who was here last week for multifamily? Well, how was it? What do you guys think? Amazing. So keep up. Well, we're later in the presentation, I'll have the information. So the third Monday of the month is going to be focused on multifamily and more advanced strategies. So keep that in mind. So welcome. Who's here for the first time? Well, welcome. Make sure if you should have gotten your little green sticker when you checked in. So make sure you get a chance. For those of you who are regulars, make sure you reach out and make our newcomers feel welcome. And then also we've experimented with different versions of the introduction round. When the group first began, we were so small that everybody had a chance to introduce themselves. And then we tried various things like the catch box. But I think now we're back to, we're just going to try to see if you feel like introducing yourself, and we can move through this relatively fast. We'll just let those of you who want to present yourself, introduce yourself. So with that being said, who would like to introduce themselves? Anybody over here? God, it just amazes me that, oh, here we go. I was going the wrong way. I should have gone to the right side of the room. Here, please stand up.
Hi, excuse me. My name is Travis Nogler. This is my first one of this group. I was only here last week for the very first time, so I came to the multifamily. This is my first non-multifamily, I guess. And I'm looking at multifamily, but I actually own some single-family properties in Dayton, and I'm a realtor by trade and database programmer. That's what I do. Thanks.
And if it helps, we put some sample questions up there and the idea of this round is to get to know you more personally. So we threw the bonus questionnaire, something that most people don't know about you. The idea is to get to know you a little bit more personally.
Hi, everybody. My first name's Kulvinder, Kulvinder Singh. Singh. So I wanted to share something about one of our speakers, Bill. In the early 90s, Bill was working at Bishop Hawk. I was typing leases for Ethan Conrad while I was in law school. And I've been a lawyer for 23 years. I'm also a broker. Jedi Realty Corp is the name of the business. And it's a business, somebody want to buy or sell a business. And I can pay commission to anybody who's a real estate licensed person here if you refer me.
All right. Anybody else back here want to say hi? Wow, we got a shy crowd tonight.
Hi, my name is Tony Poppet. I'm a realtor and I flip homes. I've been doing this for a few years now. Interested in real multifamily. As I came last week, it's pretty interesting. So anyone has deals you want to trade, you are a wholesaler, you have deals, or you want to flip homes, you want to partner, you need funds for your flips, let me know. We can work together in the flipping area. Thank you.
I know Kyle wants to say something.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Marcotte. My 9 to 5, I'm a full-time multifamily real estate investor. That's also the area of real estate. Something people don't know about me, I used to play soccer at UC Davis. So.
All right.
Hi guys, Guido. I'm actually from Switzerland originally and only moved here last summer. I mainly do mortgage note investing. Whoever is on the Facebook group of real estate sometimes sees a post from me. Just last week or this week, I put out an opportunity to purchase first lien position note for a duplex in Milwaukee. I've already done that 3 times before, so it's not a first timer for me in Milwaukee. I have a team up there, and this is most likely we have to foreclose on the borrower, and it's most likely going to be seller financing sale then in the end. But it will generate a nice cash flow. If you have any interest, come see me after this.
All righty. Anybody else? All right. I think that was probably the most efficient check-in that we've done. So Colton, who's handling our tech, keeps telling me that if I stand right here, we won't have any problems with the speakers. All right. So we have a Bring a Friend challenge. So there's cards at the check-in for both the multifamily and the regular real estate meetup. So help yourself, pass these along to your friends. We think that if you're getting value out of learning how to build wealth and get financial freedom through real estate investing, you should tell your friends. More importantly, bring your partner or your spouse, or bring your whole team, as Sierra Bay Development does and our other sponsors. Okay, disclaimer, everything you learn here tonight is for educational purposes. So if you hear any deal specific stuff, make sure you check with your own financial advisors and tax people. That being said, let's move on to our sponsor spotlights. So first of all, we have to thank the Fulton 80 Tap House. This has been our home for about the last 6 months, and we love this place. It's so great. We love the fact that we can get some cocktails and food, and by their sponsorship allows us to keep the attendance to the group free. So our goal is to always keep it free to attendees so they can get access to this valuable information. So we help them set up a Facebook page. If you want to check in, show them support, that'd be awesome. We also love our volunteers. Colton's probably our most valuable volunteer. He runs all our tech stuff. He makes it sound good, does all the video. So he's done a fantastic job. We've gotten most of the bugs worked out. I think it's been sounding pretty good, except for when I put the mic into the speaker. But other than that, things are good. Kyle helped out tonight with check-in. So appreciate that. And Josh helped us with setup tonight. Also, if you want to be part of volunteering, we always need help tearing down. And if you want to get more involved, just come talk to me and we'll find something for you to do. So we have a new sponsor. Simplistic Realty is a brand new sponsor of the Real Estate Roundtable. Many of you probably know Mike Zuccolillo, And Marissa and Ken and Natalie Jamaica, they're all part of Simplistic Realty. Unfortunately, none of them are here tonight, but we're super excited to have their sponsorship for the Real Estate Roundtable. Randy Just is also a sponsor of the Real Estate Roundtable. He is also not here tonight. He's a house flipper and real estate agent up in the Marysville area. So if you find any deals up there, make sure you reach out to him. Matt, the mortgage guy. I believe Matt's sons are both in Little League right now, so he's not here as well, but I just want to give a shout out. He's a conventional mortgage broker. However, he is an awesome resource for just about everything to do with loans. So if you have a challenging property, trying to get it financed, reach out to Matt. And Sierra Bay Development. I understand Will's here, and he's going to talk a little bit about Sierra Bay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Will Dengler. I'm the CEO and president of Sierra Bay Real Estate and Development. Our headquarters is in Gold River, California. We are an investment-minded real estate brokerage. We're close to about 30 agents now. A lot of our agents are multifamily investors, flippers working on their first developments. A lot of our agents have actually gotten their first flip by being in-house. We get a lot of flips that we can't move on, and we tend to dish them out to our agents on staff and helping them build their business and their net worth. So if it sounds like something that's interesting to you, please come up to me. We have a few Sierra Bay people that will be here. On the other side, our commercial division is starting to get aggressive with some off-market properties right now. And we have a couple of multifamily buildings that are 10 cap or higher right now that we're trying to place buyers for. So it was one of the conversations seeing Bill tonight. We were trying to talk to as many 1031 or Delaware Statutory Trust people as we can to try to offload some inventory. So if you guys are interested in multifamily or commercial buildings, please talk to us. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Also, we have friends of the Real Estate Roundtable. You heard from Guido. The friends are people that just want to support us financially and don't really need a marketing opportunity, even though he already spoke to us about his notes. Also, Colin Clementson is a friend of the Real Estate Roundtable. If you want to get involved with sponsorship, just come talk to me. Just before we go to the break, I just want to find out who's all's here tonight. So who are our wholesalers? We only have 2, 3, 4. Okay, here they go. God, people are shy tonight. So the reason we're going through this is we're about to go to break. So whoever you identify with, if you're looking to get some properties like I own, reach out to your wholesalers. So with that being said, who are our flippers? You need to connect with those wholesalers. So these are your flippers. Make sure you connect with the wholesalers. Who's looking for buy and holds right now? Out of state? Hands went down. A multifamily? Who's multifamily guys? All right. Commercial? And who are our private lenders, our money people? Anybody doing private money? No money in the room tonight. Money's tight. And notes. We got Guido doing notes. Alrighty. As I mentioned, since we have kind of our tax deferred double header tonight, we're going to go ahead and take break early. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Like I said, get a drink, do some networking. We'll get Bill all mic'd up, and we'll get right into 1031 in 15 minutes. Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and start the official presentations tonight. So while Bill is talking, Kyle's going to come around with some handouts and Bill's business cards. And then when Jamie talks, he'll come around with, she's got some handouts as well. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to let Bill go ahead and introduce himself. I think he knows himself better than I do. I've seen Bill present, I don't know, probably a dozen times now. This is fantastic information. And I'm always amazed that, in the real estate world, everybody's really focused on earning money, but no one's thinking about protecting the money that they've already made. So I don't do anything without thinking of my tax advantage strategy before I do it. So with that being said, let's start with Bill. Welcome.
Thank you. We just turned this on. Can you guys hear me all right? Too loud, not too loud? A little too loud. Can you hear me now, Mike? Okay. Welcome. My name is Bill Angove, and I'm with a company called Asset Preservation. We are a national qualified intermediary for 1031 exchanges. Our company was actually started right here locally back in 1990. So we've been around for 28 or 29 years, almost 30 years. I've been with the company now for 21 years, teaching, marketing, educating CPAs, attorneys, commercial brokers, realtors, investors like yourself on the benefit of exchanges. Our company's actually done over 185,000 exchanges nationwide. We're not just here in Northern California. We actually have 2 operations. Our headquarters is Roseville, and then our East Coast operation is in New York. I'm actively involved in local commercial real estate organizations such as CREW and ACRE and EDCAR, which is El Dorado County Board of Realtors, PCAR, Placer County Association of Realtors, Sacramento Association of Realtors, South Lake Tahoe, and North Lake Tahoe. So a lot of this I speak all over Northern California about exchanges. So what I'm going to introduce today is how many of you, well, let me ask a question. How many of you have been involved in an exchange before? Fair number of you. So a lot of you, this might be a new topic. So hopefully we'll give a little bit of information to everybody in the room, either basics or advanced on 1031 exchanges. This is part of the Internal Revenue Code. It's been around since 1921. And just as an introductory, what this allows you as an investor to do is sell your property and defer your taxes, both state and federal, and buy new investment property anywhere in the United States. Jamie, don't let me forget about exchanging out of California. That's a topic we need to talk about today. So what I'm going to talk about is what is it? What are the taxes if you sell, the capital gains taxes? Can I exchange into different states? What's like kind in an exchange? What are the exchange numbers, what we call the exchange equation? You may have heard the term before, buy of equal or greater value when you do an exchange. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about holding periods. How long do you need to hold a property before you can do your next exchange? Or maybe convert that property to a primary residence. We have a lot of people that are coming over, exchanging out of the Bay Area and exchanging here. You and I both know what they're going to do. They're going to eventually what? Move into that property as a primary residence. Can they do that? Will be the topic that I'll talk about. I'll touch on vacation homes because a lot of people, I was just in Tahoe for the weekend, and probably more than 50% of the ownership up in Tahoe City is what? Second homes, right? And that brings up a topic that South Lake Tahoe is dealing with right now, and North Lake Tahoe and Truckee are going to be dealing with it, is putting restrictions on folks that have vacation second homes, how often they can rent the property out versus how much they can use it because they have a housing problem. I mean, a lot of their homes in Tahoe City are $800,000 to $1 million and up. Well, a lot of people that work in that community, of course, can't afford those homes, and so they do have a housing problem up there. If you've heard of the TRPA, which is the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, they have a big meeting coming up very soon on that very topic. And as you may or may not have heard, we voted rent control down last year, right? Or this year. It's coming back. There's 2 bills that are being proposed in the Senate and Assembly here in California to bring rent control back. So if you're not involved in the California Apartment Association, you should be, because they'll be talking about that threat. So hold, sell, or an exchange. You or your clients, if you're realtors or otherwise, have an option. They can hold and not sell the property, pay down the mortgage, and maybe increase rents if they can in the near future. Hold that property and stay with it. The problem is what's not happening. What's not working for you is your equity. Sure, you've got a property that's now $500,000, $750,000, and it builds value, and yeah, you're paying down the mortgage. But if you've got a high equity property, what can you do with that property? You can sell it, leverage, exchange into 2, 3, 4 properties, or you can consolidate where you've got multiple properties you've owned for a long period of time. You can sell 2, 3, 4, 5 properties, consolidate all that equity into a long-term triple net lease like a Walgreens or CVS stores. We see a lot of those types of exchanges happen, and that can happen. You can sell and pay your taxes. Well, I'll talk about that in just a minute. Or do an exchange. And what an exchange allows you to do is sell and defer paying those taxes. If you sell that asset and you don't do an exchange, you have some options. Well, you have 1031. How many of you are familiar with Section Code 1033? The people in Paradise, California are very familiar with Section Code 1033. It allows someone that has a property either taken through eminent domain, a disaster. It allows them to take the insurance money they've received and have 2 years to reinvest those funds into similar like property. So Section 1033 is being used quite a bit. Section Code 121, which is the primary residence exclusion. I'm not going to get into that in too much detail. Section Code 453, I heard someone mention seller financing. That's an option to do an exchange where if I have $1 million property and the buyer offers me $200,000 down, they ask me to carry the $800,000 over 5 or 10 years, principal interest only at a certain interest rate. That's a way to do it. But if that note comes due in 5 or 10 years and the principal gets paid off, what are the taxes going to be in 5 or 10 years? Do you know? I don't know. It depends on who's in office and who controls Congress. And then Section Code 721, where you have an option to upload into or to buy into a UPREIT, as it's called. You have companies that will buy commercial properties. In exchange, you'll receive OP shares. And then what's not on there is what Jamie's going to talk about, is exchanging into a Delaware Statutory Trust, or DST. So I have a slide on that, but I'll skip that as we go. So what are the taxes? Do I pay ordinary income taxes? No, I pay capital gains taxes when I sell an investment property. I have to have owned it for longer than a year. And the tax rate, which isn't up there, that most people know, is 15%. So I buy an asset, I own it for longer than a year, I pay 15%, but that changed in 2013. If you have gains in excess of $450,000 or more married filing jointly, that rate kicks up to 20%, okay? And then there's what we call the 3.8 net investment tax. How many of you are familiar with that one? When they voted in Obamacare, they instituted this net investment tax. So if you're single and have income over $200,000 or married filing jointly, they're going to tack another 3.8% on top of that 20%. And then when you sell, I feel like that, but wait, there's more kind of guy, right? Is when you sell, you have a property, you're allowed to take depreciation. That depreciation lowers your income that you pay on your taxes annually every year. That depreciation gets taxed first at 25%. Then you have the long-term capital gains, and then you have the 3.8, and then you have California. We voted in Prop 30 years ago when we were in the session. Prop 30 was Jerry Brown's bill to create a temporary tax or increase in California taxes on a sliding scale. California's tax is 9.3% on income. This temporary tax was supposed to go away a few years ago, but we voted it back in again. So our temporary tax rate is anywhere from 0 to 13.3%. And I have an example I'll show you on all this. I'm going to skip these 2 slides because they're a little dated. So exchange has been around since 1921. It allows you to sell an investment property, defer taxes. Now, the reason I go over this again is because with tax reform 2018, they did away with what we call personal property exchanges. Anybody done a personal property exchange in the room? If you had a 1965 convertible Ferrari, that's a collectible car. You could sell that, defer your taxes, and buy like kind or another collectible vehicle. So this was an actual deal we did where a gentleman sold this $700,000 1965 convertible Ferrari. He bought a Ferrari Dino, he bought a DeLorean, and then he bought one other collectible car. If you own an airplane that was held for trade or business or held for investment, have a buddy who owns a bail bonds business in San Luis Obispo. He sold a Cessna 172 and bought a 210, deferred the taxes, both state and federal. All that went away. And what's kind of, other than the collectible stuff, your clients or you folks that owned farms, vineyards, hotels, there was a lot of personal property that go along with those machinery, equipment, harvesters. All that went away in 2018. So it's strictly real property for real property anywhere in the United States. If you have questions as I'm going along, because I talk fast, feel free to just raise your hand and ask a question. So here's an example up on the screen. You have a married couple filing jointly. They're selling a property for $1 million. They purchased it for $400,000, but they depreciated it down, so their basis is $100,000. So their gain is $900,000. Good problem to have, right? So there's 4 levels of tax potential. You see an second item from the bottom. So let's see how the math works out. So the depreciation they've taken on this property gets taxed first at 25%. So there's $75,000 in tax to depreciation recapture. The balance of their gain, this other $600,000, remember $900,000 a gain. So he taxed for $300 of it, which is the depreciation. The other $600 is going to get taxed at 20%. And then the net investment tax kicks in another $34,200. And then California hits it at 12.3% based upon that sliding scale.
Okay, so they bought it for 4, they're selling for $1 million, and they're going to pay $339,000 in tax. You know when they call us? About the day before close of escrow. Because not only do they finally get a hold of their tax person or run their numbers through their TurboTax or whatever they do, the escrow officer closing the transaction will say, oh, by the way, we have to take off that $1 million. We have to take 3 1/3 of the total sales price as a prepayment to California for your taxes. Isn't that fun? So that's when we get the call the day before close of escrow, or even more fun at the closing table. Oh, we've decided to do an exchange. And the last minute exchanges are possible. It's a little stressful, as you might think, right? But it can be done. So if they take the $339,000 off their sales price, they're going to have $660,000 left over to reinvest. This page shows you that on the replacement property purchase, they take that $660 and they use it as a 70 or 25% down payment or a 75% LTV. They can leverage into $2.6 million worth of property. Not a bad way to go. But at the same rate, if they do an exchange and they intend to buy a new investment property at the same 25% or LTV of 75%, look how much more property they can buy. And you can diversify. Like for like is very broad. That's the biggest misunderstanding. Even in my 21 years in the business, they'll say, oh, if I sell a rental house, I have to buy another rental house. True or false, everybody? False. For those of you, this is new, very broad. And maybe you want to buy more real property, but you may have some money left over. And so that's where the DST could also be an option for you, where you can kind of have your real property that you like to manage and take care of yourself. But the DST is also, taking away, and it gives you the option to have what I call mailbox money, right? But we don't have money in the mailbox anymore. It's all electronic transfer, right? So that's one of the things that we look at. Here's what the code says. It says no gain or loss shall be recognized on the exchange of property, real property, held for productive use, trade, or business, or held for investment, if such property is exchanged for property of like kind. That's what the code says, okay? Real property for real property anywhere in the United States. Are people exchanging out of California? Yes. Nevada's still number 1 place to go, but what's number 2? Nope. Texas used to be. Then what happened when they got to Texas? They go, oh, property taxes. Oh, Florida, there's that kind of that insurance thing, hurricanes and things like that. Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. Those are the main ones we see people exchanging into. And so now I'm going to cover this topic. When you exchange out of California, California doesn't forget. What does that mean? Let's say you bought a property in California for $100,000 and now it's worth $4. So you got $300,000 of gain that you have if you pay taxes if you do a straight sale. But you do an exchange. California still recognizes 1031. So you exchange in Nevada. What's the advantage of Nevada? 0 tax, right? But California says, oh, that's great. You exchange Nevada, but you have to continue to file a California tax return every year owning that asset out of state. And when you sell in Nevada or whatever state you're in, California says, show me the money. So there's taxes owed, even though you exchange out of I got you guys 1 second, okay? So, and if you don't file that tax return, California is going to send you a tax bill for that gain you deferred in the exchange way back then. Correct. You're out of state. Right. So, that's people say, well, how do I avoid not doing exchanges anymore? I'm real estate rich and I'm cash poor. And I say, you die. They don't like that answer. Where's the laughter in this group? They're kind of just. But on that point, when you do die, how much do your kids get to inherit? 22 million a couple, or 11 million under the current laws. 11 million, yes. I don't get involved in the legislative side on that. We're just trying to protect 1031 because 1031s almost went away with tax reform with the president. But right now, that's still in play. And we've got a newsletter on our website I'd be glad to send to you. on that topic, and it has a link to the California form that you have to file. Other questions? I think you're going to ask me. It's like 2840 or something like that. I can get it for you. Yeah, I'll bring up our website at the end here and show you. But if you go to our website and just put it, or even Google 1031 out of California, you'll find articles on that topic. Our zero tax states. Isn't that great? You not only owe California tax, but you owe that state tax too. Isn't that great? I know, I'm agreeing with you. Talk to Congress. So what can we not do exchanges into? These are the exceptions to the rule. It says stock and trade or other property held primarily for sale. Who does that apply to? Correct. Let me hold that topic. But like if you had Elliott Homes or other people that buy and build property for a living, large developers, okay, they're excluded from Section Code 1031 because the property in the IRS's eyes and the Franchise Tax Board, who's very aggressive auditing 1031s these days, especially for the shorter holding periods, they say no. Stocks, bonds, or notes. I can now exchange into stocks, bonds, or notes. Interest in a partnership. So this is an interesting one because, especially during the recession, you had multiple people that own properties in LLCs. What's the advantage to an LLC? Limited liability company, right? So it limits your asset, the coverage on that asset. So let's say Jamie and I and Patrick buy this hotel at an LLC. Now it gets to be 2009 and the value of the hotel has gone down dramatically. And the lender says, hey, you guys need to get your LTV back into shape, come up with a couple $1 million or we're going to foreclose. And so we decide we're going to sell the property. But they want to go exchange somewhere else and I want to go cash out. The problem is that the entity that owns the asset is what? The LLC. That's a separate taxpayer. And therefore, we would need to dissolve the LLC or somehow get out of that property and go our separate ways. So if Patrick here or Mike wanted to sell a property and exchange into the building with us to become a partner, we couldn't sell him an interest in the LLC. That's the important area. We could sell him an interest in the property as a tenant and common owner, but an interest in an LLC or a partnership interest is not exchangeable. In English, you need to give up a deed to real estate and receive a deed to real estate at the end of the day. It can be with co-owners. You can sell with co-owners and buy with co-owners, but if you're selling for $500,000, at the end of the day, you should own $500,000 of that new property. And I'll talk about the exchange equation in just a minute, okay? Investor motives. Why do people do this other than tax deferral? Leverage. We have very low interest rates on borrowing. We can diversify our assets into different types of properties. Consolidation, cash flow, increase our cash flow. Management relief. I love saying this. People are tired of the T's. You guys know what the T's are? Tenants, toilets, termites, trash, and taxes. You've heard that one before. So you may have clients or you may be tired of the T's, as I call them. So you can diversify into different types of properties and maintain that management relief. And then what Jamie's going to talk about is the DST. Okay? I always love this slide, but it comes in too slow. So I'm just going to make it all come in at once. These are some examples of what is like for like. You see vacation homes, you see oil and gas, you see solar fields, you see apartments, you see land, you see ranch land. All that is like for like in an exchange that qualifies. So it's very broad, including the DST. Okay? Any questions on what is like for like in the 1031 world? Absolutely, as long as it's held for trade or business or held for investment. You bet. Yeah, very broad. So the question is, how long do I need to hold the property until I next exchange or move into the property? That's a question I get on a daily basis. Anybody know the answer to that one? 2 years? You're absolutely right. See, and he's absolutely correct because there is no set holding period in the Treasury regulations or the 1031 code. Once you buy a property, how long you need to hold it for. Now, there's a private letter ruling out there. You see it up on the screen. It stated that they would be satisfied with a 2-year holding period. But you know who that applies to? Only to the taxpayer that asked the question. Some tax advisors say a minimum of a year and a day, or straddling 2 tax years. So then you're filing 2 tax returns. But there's court cases out there. One court case, well, that's not it. There's a court case where a taxpayer held the property for 6 months and they won against the IRS. Because the key words that are up there, the very key word that's underlined at the very top says intent. See, these taxpayers didn't exchange from property A to property B, but they lost their primary residence during the recession and they had exchanged into property B only 6 months prior. So they moved into what they just bought, which is bad, right? But they won against the IRS because they proved that they had the intent to hold the property for 5 years when their daughter went to college there. So they were going to buy it, have a rental, daughter moves in later down the road and they have it fine. They lost it or lost their primary residence, moving into this property, IRS audited, but they won under the keyword you see up there, bless you, under the keyword intent. Now, there's another case where the taxpayer held the property for 12 years, and he lost with the IRS because he was acting as a dealer. When he bought the property originally, he had the intent to split it and develop it. Recession hits, he stops all those development activities, comes out of the recession, and then calls Mike and Jamie and all these people, say, hey, let's reinvest in this thing. Let's do this as a partnership and sell it later on down the road. So after 12 years, he sold it and he didn't exchange. But the IRS said, look, you were doing the activities of a dealer. You were buying to build to sell, okay? And that's what he did for a living. So that's where they disallowed the exchange. Now, if you're a casual investor, that's fine. I'm going to just cover this one quickly. People think that they can move into their rentals and collect the $250,000 or $500,000 exclusion. Not anymore. Post 2009, you see up here, they said, if you move into your rental for only just 2 years, you've owned it for 6 years, you may only be entitled to a portion of that gain. So it says there 2 out of the 6 years, or $100,000 is only eligible for the primary residence exclusion. The balance you're going to pay tax on. So the longer you live there, the more of the $250,000 or $500,000 exclusion you would get. So don't be under the understanding that you have all these rentals and you can go move into them for 2 years and collect the $250,000 or $500,000. That changed after 2009. Okay. Yes. So no, it applies to anything after 2009. No. So let's say you had a rental for 15 years. 5 of it was post 2009. They're only talking about those years of rental post 2009, not what happened prior to. Okay. This is a fun one. This is a court case here in California. A realtor did an exchange and was going to hold the property for investment. So she says, but what she did is you see that she moved into it and she falsely reported the income to cover her tracks. She also listed another rental as her residence and she pled guilty. She's doing 14 months in jail. What's that? Oh, relinquished property. Yeah. Relinquished, replacement, old property, new property. I just say old property, new property, relinquished, replacement. Just keeping it simple. But thank you for the question. All right. So here's the question for all. Yes, sir. Hold that thought. I'm going to cover the exchange equation in just a few minutes, but I appreciate that. So for the flippers, California is the most aggressive agency in the United States auditing 1031s. And more than likely, if it's less than a year holding period that you file on Form 8824, which is the reporting form for exchanges, you might get a love letter from the California Franchise Tax Board. I'm not guaranteeing anything. So there's just a lot of factors. These are the cases that talked about it. But they look at what the taxpayer's intent. Did you buy it to move into it after a year and a day? If they could prove that, they have grounds to disallow the exchange. There's all the kind of different circumstances that come into play on that topic. Quickly on vacation homes. Do they qualify? There was a court case not long ago called the Moore case, and the Moores did an exchange on a second home. What's a second home versus a vacation home? A second home is strictly used for personal use. They bought the property for X, they sold it for Y, and they bought another second home. IRS audited and said, that's not held for investment in our eyes. Well, it used to be. So they finally took the tax court cases, and the IRS argued successfully that it's not held for trade or business or held for investment under 1031. So the IRS issued a revenue procedure. A revenue procedure tells us kind of what the IRS is thinking and gives some guidelines on these topics. And they said, look, if you're going to do a vacation second home exchange for the 2 years before you sell it, the personal use has to be no more than 2 weeks. And you need to rent it out for 2 weeks or more for each of those 2 years. And then when you exchange into the new property in South Lake Tahoe, for the 2 years after, personal use cannot be in any more than 14 days, and you need to rent it out for 14 days or more. So that's just the topic on vacation homes. And every one of these topics, by the way, is a newsletter on our website that you can bring up and search. There's over 250 topics. Was there a question? Yes, ma'am. No. But on that topic, I was talking about moving back into it. So most people thought they could move back into it, live there for 2 years and pocket the 250 or 500. And that's not the case per that 2009 change. But probably more than likely, you have to live there closer to the 5-year period. Then, yes, you can be a lot closer to that. Okay. So this is going back to the gentleman's question. What's the exchange value? And you'll hear people, as I mentioned earlier, what's called the exchange equation, or you'll hear the term buy of equal or greater value when you do an exchange. And that's a good thing to remember, but not entirely accurate. Now I want to make sure we're clear, this is not the IRS's rules. This is if you don't, are there any IRS auditors in the room tonight? Okay. If you don't like the IRS and you don't want to pay taxes, do two things. Number one, it says up there, reinvest all of your exchange proceeds, and two, acquire property with the same or greater debt. So my old property is $900,000. My outstanding loan balance at the time of the sale is $3. My closing costs are $60. My proceeds are $540,000. I'm going to go buy a new property for $1.2 million. So I use all the money out of my old property as a down payment, and I borrow $660. I have what we call zero boot. I spent all my cash, and I took on equal or greater debt. Back to your question, sir. So if you had $1 million property and you refinance it, so you have $250,000 of equity, in the exchange, if you don't want to pay any taxes, you need to reinvest the $250 and have a new loan that's going to be $750 or greater. Okay? Generally, what the tax people say is it's got to be used for a legitimate business interest when you refinance it to write off those things. Yeah. Like buy more real estate. Now, I will tell you this. Under audits in the past, people have done refinances right before they do the sale or exchange. And the IRS and Franchise Tax Board loves this one, is they will treat that $750 as boot to the taxpayer if they did the refinance in anticipation of the exchange to avoid tax on that money. So that's why you want to wait for 2 years before you do your 1031. Possibly. Yeah, they could do that. What we see more often than not is taking your $1 million example, moving all that $1 million into another property, and then calling their lender after the fact, saying, can I do an equity line or refinance this after the fact? And the answer is yes, because a refinance is not a taxable event. It's not a reportable taxable event. So refinancing before or after, typically we see people do it after the exchange. Do I have any lenders in the room? No lenders. Okay. So here's an example where we buy a lesser property, which is okay to do, but you see they only invest $440 of the $540, so there's $100,000 of cash left over, and that's fine. But they're going to pay taxes on that $100,000. But wait, there's more. You see their loan is $40,000 less than their old loan. That $40,000 difference, not cash to them, it's just a lesser loan. They're going to pay tax on that too, based upon those numbers that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. So we got $140,000 of boot. What we then have to look at is what did they pay for this property originally? If they paid $800 or $850, they probably don't need to do an exchange, depending on how long they've owned it, of course. So they're going to have $140,000. And I know that some of you want to pull cash out, either kids' college or want to pay off debt from other assets, things like that. That's fine. But you want to look at, if you're going to buy a lesser property, what are you going to owe the state and Fed on that 140? Okay. And this is just another example where they reinvested all their cash, but their loan is $40,000 less. So they're going to have to come out of pocket to pay the taxes on that $40,000. So this is the basic exchange timeline. Keep it simple. KISS, keep it simple something, right? Isn't that what this stands for? Anyway, all an exchange simply is a sale and purchase. Just like you're selling your primary residence and you're trading up. That's really kind of what an exchange is. What's different in the 1031 world is at close of escrow, the proceeds from the sale, the deed goes directly to the buyer, just like your normal sale through your title company, but the proceeds are held and wired to the Bill Angove Swiss bank account. I just see if you're paying attention. Now, I want to touch on that topic because this is a really interesting one. What does it mean to be qualified to be a qualified intermediary? Do you know it means nothing? There is no regulation on a state or federal level to be a qualified intermediary. And what do? We hold, at our company, we hold anywhere between $1 billion and $2 billion of people's money nationwide. So be careful. There's a lot of qualified intermediaries out there. Most of your mainstream qualified intermediaries are owned by a title company. So whether you know Placer Title or Old Republic or Fidelity or First American or Orange Coast or Cornerstone, most of those companies have their own qualified intermediary arm, also known as a facilitator, straw man, middleman, depends on how many years you've been around the business. Right? A lot of those have a relationship with, because there are the horror stories in my industry too. Even right here in Sacramento, a gentleman was holding $700,000 of someone's money in an exchange, and he misinvested it and lied to where the money was going. The problem was where he invested the money, the property went bankrupt. What do you think happened to that person's exchange money? Got locked up in the bankruptcy, and he was sentenced to 8 years in jail. And there's been worse cases out there, so you be careful. We are owned by a national title company, Stewart Title, out of Houston, Texas. That's our parent, and that parent company backs our performance, and those funds being held by us, the $1 billion to $2 billion of that money. So that's where you get your security. I'll talk about price in the end. So when you're ready to close your new property, we're going to wire the money back to the title company handling your purchase, and you wind up with a deed to your replacement property. Pay very careful attention to this side of the screen right here. If you're taking notes, that is day 0 of an exchange. Anybody tell me what that date is? Close of escrow. Thank you for playing. Important note. We get about 20 calls a month at our national headquarters here in Roseville. I closed yesterday. I closed last week, and the money's sitting in my Wells Fargo bank account. Can I help you? Can you help me with an exchange? And the answer is absolutely not. So if you're new to this topic, the exchange needs to be set up with us, via your realtor, via your title company, I don't care here. The documentation needs to be set up and signed by you or your client, depending on who you are in the room, before that closing takes place. Because if those funds go anywhere except to us, that's a taxable event. Okay? So my order of preference, you list your property on the market, you find a buyer, you open escrow with your favorite title company, call us, because we're going to ask a lot of qualifying questions. How do you own the property? Is it in your name? Is it in a trust? Is it irrevocable trust? Is it an LLC? Is it a corporation? Is there seller financing? How long have you owned the property? All these questions, because we want to pull out all these issues in advance of the sale. And then we're going to call the title company and have them send us a copy of the preliminary title report, which also brings out information, and a copy of the sale contract. Oh, this deal's closing in 2 days. Might want to put this up on the priority list, right? So we qualify that client from the 1031 standpoint prior to the closing taking place. This is the most fun part of an exchange. There's a little joke there. For those of you who've been involved in exchange, is the identification period a little stressful? You know what it is? If you've never done an exchange before, or you represent clients, if you're a realtor, is they close escrow and then they take off for a foreign country for 3 weeks. And then you're stuck finding properties for them and doing everything through the internet. Because what they have to do is they have to identify these replacement properties by midnight of the 45th day of the exchange, and they have to do it in writing. So what we do is we provide them an identification letter. They filled out with the addresses of the properties they're considering buying, and they'll send that list to us before midnight of the 45th day of the exchange. Clarification, I can sell here and buy my new property the next day. The 45 days is just the maximum time they have to identify the potential replacement properties. The total timeline from closing is 180 days, or roughly 6 months, to close on that new property or properties that they're buying. How many properties can we identify? Well, let's go up to the next question here. So the first option is they can identify 3 properties. This is the most commonly used identification rule. I can identify 1, 2, or all 3 properties. Why 3? Well, if property A falls through, you want to be able to go to the next one or the next one. So they give you the option of 3. Or if you want to buy 2 or 3 properties, that 3 property rule also helps, because the second rule makes it harder. The 200% rule basically states that if you list 4 or more potential replacement properties, the value of all those properties combined can't be more than double the price of the property. I didn't write these rules. Let's do an example. I'm selling for $500,000. I identify 4 properties. This rule says all 4 of those properties' combined values can't be more than $1 million. So you can see that could be difficult depending on the marketplace you're in. Now, if I'm selling for $10 million and I identify 15 properties, so long as the value of all 15 of those properties don't exceed $20 million, I still fall under the 200% rule, because wait, there's more. The 95% rule states that if you do list more than 3 properties and their values do exceed double what you're selling for, you must acquire 95% of that list. So if I'm selling for $500,000, I list 5 properties worth $2 million. What rule am I going to fall under? The 95% rule. That's seldomly used rule. Most people use the first one because you can see it can be difficult. Is the list changeable? Yes. I can change my list anywhere in this period. What I usually tell clients is wait until you're about day 44 and send us your final list. Can I have my replacement property under contract before I close my old property? Yes. What's that? Correct. That's what I was stating earlier, is you can close the new property anywhere in this timeline. You could close it the next day, right? So let's say I identify 3 properties on day number 5, and I get down the road and those properties get sold out from underneath me. Well, what I'm going to do is tell you to revoke your old list and send us your new list. And you can do that as many times as you want during this period, but here's where it gets difficult. Now you're out on day 60 of your exchange. Is the list changeable for any reason whatsoever? And the answer is no. Not for any reason whatsoever. The IRS says, even though, Barry bought this property out from underneath me, if I offer Barry $50,000 more than what he paid for it, he might take the deal. Right, Barry? Yeah, he's like that deal. Okay. So the list is changeable, but only during that 45-day period. If you're going to have your replacement property under contract before you close your old one, what language would you probably want in that contract? Contingency upon the old property selling. Okay. Just to protect yourself, because if for whatever reason this buyer falls through and you're under contract to buy this one 30 days from now, and you don't have what I call a Houdini clause to get out of that contract because this deal fell apart, you've got a problem. You might have to do what we call a reverse exchange. You may have heard of a reverse exchange? A few of you have. For those that have the ability to buy first, a reverse exchange, basically they use the qualified intermediary. They put this property under contract. That contract gets assigned to an LLC that we create, and the LLC, with the taxpayer money, buys the replacement property first. Then you have 180 days in reverse to sell your old property and exchange into the one we're holding for. Expensive. Typically, exchanges for what we cost for forward exchanges are anywhere between, call it $700 and $1,100 nationwide with the bigger QIs. Okay, reverse exchanges with us cost $8,000 to $10,000. So it's a lot more complicated transaction to do. Comment? Oh, okay. All right. So that's just the rules on identification. Won't get into that in too much detail. So lastly, closing exchanges. As long as the transaction is not closed, we can set up the exchange. We're going to prepare all the documentation. Stop the closing. The escrow officer may say, well, it's too late. And you're going to ask, has this transaction closed? And the escrow officer is going to say, no, but I have to redo all my paperwork. And then you politely tell the escrow officer, if we don't set up the exchange and I'm owe $60,000 in tax, you and I are going to have a legal situation. So the exchange can be set up last minute, but it's important. Can we bring up the website, Eric? Questions?
On one of your slides, you said fair market value. So could you buy something under market value that would still qualify?
What they're basically stating is fair market value usually relates to the contract value of the property. So not necessarily under market, it's fair market value of that property. Just real quickly, everybody, what I wanted to show you here is, have any of you heard of opportunity zones yet? Okay. We are doing a webinar, and for whatever reason, it's not showing up on our website. Okay. We're doing a webinar on Thursday about opportunity zones. And if you go to our website, you'll see, and there'll be a place to sign up. We already have 1,000 people, but opportunity zones are another way that you don't need a 1031 exchange. You can invest into, I call them redevelopment districts, revived. But that's an area for you to look at if you're interested in opportunity zones. But I just want to show you quickly here. This is our website, and it has all the topics that I've spoken about today in a newsletter format. So we have the types of exchanges, and let's pick one here. So there are the basics. And so you can print that out, email it. If you want to email it to someone else, that topic's on there. We have topics on reverse exchanges, improvement exchanges. We didn't even get into improvement exchanges today for time, but this is a really good resource. We also have a capital gain calculator on there. So if you want to plug in your numbers, kind of figure out roughly what your taxes you're going to owe, there's that on the site for you too. And you can also subscribe to our e-news. There was a question over here, sir. So make sure I got your bullet points. Bless you. 3 properties. You want to sell all 3 and combine them in one exchange to one bigger property, or buy multiple.
Clear property plus a much bigger debt on another property.
So it doesn't matter how you split up that debt from your old property in your new property. If you want to have all that debt allocated to property A and put some cash down to buy that, you could do that. And then use the rest of the cash to have another property that's free and clear, you can do that.
Finance it later, pull the cash out.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've got this refinancing theme going tonight.
Tax-free.
Yeah, tax-free. All right, I'll stick around for a little while. I do have to leave for family obligations. Was there no question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I exchange? I have 3 questions. Can I exchange in a REIT, a real estate investment trust?
No, because what do you receive in a REIT? You receive a stock share, right? Or securities. No.
Okay. Can I invest or exchange in a lease option?
No, because what are you receiving? You would be buying the lease option and not the real property.
Mm-hmm.
But a leasehold interest you could. So let's say at the corner
A lease
of
purchase.
Huh?
A lease purchase.
No, a leasehold interest.
Wow.
Let me explain the difference. So in an exchange, you need to receive a deed. Okay, that's the first thing. But let's say at Howard Ardner's at McDonald's, and Mike here and his family have owned the property for 100 years, and they'll never sell it. But what they will do is they'll grant McDonald's an 80-year lease. Okay, that leasehold, that 80-year leasehold, if it's for 30 years or more, is exchangeable for real property in exchange, or you can exchange into a leasehold so long as the leasehold interest has 30 years or more remaining. Third question.
Can I exchange in a subject to?
The subject to, what are you receiving?
The deed.
So yes, that would probably work. So long as at the end of the day you receive a deed. Yeah.
Within 180 days?
Within 180 days. There are no extensions to the 45 or 180 days. And I say that with an asterisk because the IRS has issued extensions only because of there was a certain earthquake in Napa. There's these fires that have gone along lately here in California. San Diego had some fires. So a natural disaster, if you have a property or were impacted by that natural disaster, the IRS has issued extensions.
I'm just a little curious. What are your fees, your like minimum, your maximum, your average fees that you charge?
Right. So thank you for asking that question. I've been with the company for 21 years, and the front end fee has always been the same, which is $700. So we don't charge any setup fees. When you close and the title company sends us your proceeds, that $540 in my example, we're going to take $700 out of that. When we then wire funds back out for the purchase, when we wire those funds out, we're going to take out $300. And that pays for up to 3 purchases. So out the door, if you will, our fees are $1,000. The independent companies are charging $500 to $750. Well, why are they discounting? Well, they don't have that parent protection. I can find you a company in Colorado that do your exchange online. You'll never talk to them, but you never know where your money's going to be and how safe it's going to be. Next question.
If you go the other way, you have a large amount, a very expensive property, and you diversify in, like, let's say 4 or 5. How do you allocate the portion of the gain when you say, like, a couple of years later you want to sell one of them?
You work with your tax advisor. I had the question today where a guy bought a property in Midtown. He split it into 4, and they're building new houses on each one. So you start with your basis of what you bought the property for, right? Then he split it, so then you're divvying that up 4 ways, and let's say it's equally. Then you add those capital improvements, the actual house on top. So that adds to your basis, right? So when he sells, then he and his CPA are going to figure out the allocation, probably a quarter between each one of those. Right. So her question is, what?
Here's each time.
Right. So one of the downsides to exchanges is when you buy your replacement property, typically you're not getting the full 27.5-year schedule for apartments or a new 39-year schedule for commercial. It's going to be reduced down by how much depreciation you've taken already. So if you've done 3 exchanges, your basis is really low. When you sell and you don't do another exchange, that's where the big tax gets going to come. Always talk to your CPA. Last question, because I want to be fair to Jamie.
Okay, my question is, okay, so it's a 1031 tax deferred, but let's say you get to a point to where maybe you might have so many properties that you no longer want to, keep them or do the maintenance. Is there any possible way you can give it away through a charitable remainder trust and exclude the tax?
There are ways to do that. You want to talk to a tax attorney on that? I still like the answer die, but a lot of people don't like that answer. So yeah, and there's also probably talk to Patrick or Jamie on that. The family what's the family? Not Delaware, the family trust. He's kind of biased here. It's the Delaware Statutory Trust, but there are other methods. Yeah. Thank you all for your time.
Let's hear it for Bill. He needs to take off right now, but he did pass out his cards. We have more over here if you need them. Just give us a few minutes. We're not going to be taking a break now, but we do need to get set up for Jamie. So hold on for that.
I'll stick around for a little while. So if you have questions while we're in break, I'll be glad.
Alrighty. Bill, if you want to ask questions for Bill, Bill's going to be back in the back of the room by the bar. We're going to go ahead and keep rolling. We got more content. We got Jamie Furlong here to talk about Delaware Statutory Trust. And I'm really excited about this because this is new content for me. Jamie and I met at another event, and she told me a little bit about it. And I thought this was great information that you should all know. So please welcome Jamie.
Well, thank you, Eric, for inviting me to speak here today. So I work with Legacy Investment Real Estate, and we collaborate with agents and brokers and investors to make available to their clients 1031 exchange investments that are packaged and sold as a security. So I thought I'd start by playing a little bit of charades. So I want you guys to tell me what I am. So I'm a 1031 exchange investor on the 44th day of my timeline, and my property has just fallen out of escrow, and I don't know what to do. Okay, so now who am I? I am a 1031 exchange investor on day 44 of my timeline. My property has fallen out of escrow, but I know about Delaware statutory trusts. If you don't know about Delaware statutory trusts already, that is completely normal. Most people don't. And I think part of the reason that is because Delaware statutory trusts are securities. They are regulated by the SEC, and there's a lot of rules to how they can be marketed and to whom. So they're exempt from general solicitation. You do have to be an accredited investor to buy into a Delaware statutory trust. That means you have $1 million net worth outside of your primary residence. Or if you're single, income of $200,000. If you're married, income of $300,000. DSTs in general are not for everyone. Plenty of 1031 exchanges happen every day without the use of DSTs. But it is my opinion that if you are an investor or a broker or agent or advisor for long enough, you are going to be presented with a lot of opportunities for a better exchange by knowing about them. So a Delaware statutory trust is IRS approved as like-kind property. So there is a revenue ruling 2004-84 that gives the green light to people to exchange into and out of Delaware statutory trusts. They are convenient because they allow for fractional ownership. So you or your investors do not have to go out and buy a property in its entirety all by yourself. You also don't have to find other investors to buy a property with, or find property to put into a Delaware statutory trust. There's other ways of owning real estate with other people, and Bill talked about those. It includes partnerships and LLCs, and even REITs. Those do not qualify for like-kind exchange. If you own real estate as an LLC, your entire LLC has to buy more real estate. A Delaware statutory trust, though, allows you to remain an individual investor, but have the benefits of fractional ownership. We call these pre-packaged investments. You do not, I mentioned, you don't find the property to put in the trust. You're not structuring a Delaware statutory trust. They are put together by very large, sophisticated real estate and financial service companies that we call sponsors. So these are companies who, the top sponsors are companies who have bought and sold billions of dollars of real estate and have managed or overseen the management of tens of thousands of units. So very experienced. They have acquisition teams. Those teams are constantly looking at investment properties, which are institutional quality, so high quality assets. They're doing due diligence on them. When they find a property that they like, they'll negotiate financing and they'll negotiate an offer. So the sponsor then owns that asset and they put it into the Delaware statutory trust. They then package that investment and issue what's called a private placement memorandum, which is much like an offering memorandum, but pretty big and pretty thick. It has everything you could ever want to know about that property. It's going to have reports and appraisals on the asset. It's going to have demographic reports, rent rolls, and performas. There'll be a lot of videos and photographs, and they're starting to use drone technology now as well when they put together those packages. So as an investor, that's really your resource. That's how you're deciding whether or not you want to invest in this property. So if you come to me and you're in a 1031 exchange, I'm going to show you Delaware statutory trusts with remaining equity in them. And at any given time, I might have 10 or 12 available. And then you as the investor decide which ones you want to put your money into. The minimum investment is typically $100,000 if you're in an exchange. You can be a cash investor, in which case the minimum is usually about $25,000. These are management free. You don't have to deal with the terrible T's, toilets, tenants, trash, taxes. All of that is handled by the sponsor. So as an investor in these trusts, all you have to do is check your bank account for your distribution every month. And those distributions get determined based on your percentage ownership. For example, if Delaware Statutory Trust A holds a $20 million apartment building and you've put $500,000 into that property, you are a 2.5% owner of that asset. So rent's going to come in. The property manager is going to pay expenses, pay taxes, do maintenance, pay loan, do the debt service, and then the cash flow, you're going to get 2.5% of that. When that property is sold, you will receive 2.5% of the appreciated value net sales costs. And once you're in a Delaware statutory trust, there are no capital calls or out-of-pocket expenses. There's actually never any out-of-pocket expenses. You're not going to get a call for more money. You're not going to get a call because they need to put a new roof on. They are prohibited from that by the legal terms of the Delaware statutory trust entity. Here's some visual examples of the types of assets you're going to see in a trust. Like I said, they're institutional quality. So these are 300-unit Class A apartment buildings, major retail centers. These are assets that are typically being bought and sold by pension funds, insurance companies, endowments, and REITs. They're not usually us as investors, individual investors don't have access to this quality of asset, but through the Delaware Statutory Trust, you do. You'll also see different asset types held in these types of trusts. Multifamily is popular right now, but you will see retail and office and self-storage and other asset types. Here's a map of where these assets are located. You'll notice not many of them are in California or even on the West Coast. These assets are typically located in secondary markets where rent growth is strong and job growth is also strong, and real estate is more affordable. So the sponsors who are putting together these investments are, in my opinion, perhaps one of the most significant considerations when deciding to go into a Delaware statutory trust. These are the entities who negotiated the buy. They're managing the property, and they're going to decide when to sell, and they're going to negotiate the sale as well. So if you notice there's about 40 sponsors as of 2018, but these top few are really doing most of the business. Delaware statutory trusts have been in existence since 2004. Inland and Pasco have been doing real estate syndications for, Inland's been doing it for 50 years, Pasco like 30. What's helpful for the investor about working with an experienced sponsor is that they are required to share in the private placement memorandum their track record. So you can see every deal that Inland has ever done. They've had almost 100 properties go full cycle. You can see what investors' return was for all 100 of those deals. Pasco's had something like 50 deals go full cycle. So there's a lot of transparency in this industry. And we'll start seeing more and more sponsors offering DSTs. And it's really important. Myself as a DST broker and my partner, Patrick, we spend a lot of time getting to know these companies on our investors' behalf. And I do appreciate how available they are. So the key benefits to investors are the quality of the assets. The low minimum investment is $100,000. So with much less, you can buy into something better. And the ability to diversify. If the minimum investment is only $100,000, if you sell a rental home for $400,000, you can conceivably create your own portfolio of DSTs and minimize your risk by going into different asset types, different geographic regions with different sponsors. And these really are mailbox money. Aside from some purchase agreement paperwork, there's not much else you have to do as an investor. You're going to get your distribution check every month. You're going to get regular reports. And then you're going to get tax documents, profit loss statements. If there is debt in the DST, that is non-recourse to the investor. So you do not have to qualify for that. There are no out-of-pocket expenses ever. And these qualify for the standard real estate tax benefits, including depreciation. And you guys have just finished your tax returns. I don't know if any of you guys qualified for the 199A pass-through deduction as real estate investors. No? Okay. So last year in 2018, $2.5 billion of equity went into DSTs. So it's a large and growing market. There are about 136 DST offerings. Average first year return, 5.6% cash on cash. Average days on market, 154. So that's how long it took from the DST offering to become available before the equity sold out. And I'll tell you, for some really attractive DSTs, they can sell out in 6 weeks. So now we'll talk a little bit about strategy. So with my charades, I gave the example of the panicked 1031 exchange investor, and I think that's typical. Whether you've done one or many exchanges, they are stressful. For many people, the idea of like kind feels limiting, but hopefully both Bill and now that you know about DSTs, you feel a little relief in knowing that you have more options than you might originally have thought of. So when you're thinking about your exchange, you can think more like a puzzle piece. Maybe you do buy another rental home, and then maybe with the leftover money, you buy a DST. With the tight timeline, DSTs have some advantages. One, they're prepackaged. You don't have to order an appraisal. You don't have to call the current owner and ask him for rent rolls. All of that is already together in the private placement memorandum. You can conceivably ID a DST property on the 45th day. You can call me and you can say, I need a replacement property. We can talk about what's available today. And you can have an address to give to your qualified intermediary that same day. And then once you've decided to invest in a DST, you can conceivably close on that investment in just a few days and start earning a return on your investment. When you are in an exchange, you have a very unique debt equity numbers specific to your exchange that you need to replace exactly. So if you are selling a property for $700,000 and you have a $200,000 mortgage on it. So now you have $200,000 debt, $500,000 equity. With the DSTs, they have different loan to value ratios. So you can get a little more creative with getting those numbers just right for you. And that's a little bit of math, and Patrick and I and Bill can help with that. So the investments truly are flexible to the penny. If you need to replace 5,000,002 in your exchange, we can put 5,000,002 equity and debt into a DST. And then the debt that is there is non-recourse. With the ID rules, whether it's the 3 property or the 200% or the 95% rule, you want to use those rules to your advantage. So we talk to clients a lot about identifying a Delaware statutory trust as a backup property, just in case you've identified a primary target, maybe even a backup to your primary target. But if you're using the 3 ID rules, why not list a DST as that third property? Then if you go beyond your 45 days and you're doing your due diligence and something comes up with those first 2 properties, you have an insurance policy of sorts that you have you've identified an asset of which the due diligence is already done. We also talk to people about using DSTs entirely for any boot. So you might list or sell your down leg and then you find your replacement property, but you have $100,000 left over, or you have $150,000 left over. That's a great opportunity to get your feet wet with some DST investing, especially if you're really excited about not paying taxes on those on that gain. And then again, the ability to diversify. Not have all your eggs in one basket, especially for older investors. They're not necessarily chasing appreciation. They're more interested in steady income and not losing their capital. So I have a slide here about how to talk to your clients about DSTs. And this is content we talk about with agents and brokers who might be interested in helping clients that they've known for a while or getting more listings. So one example is you have a client or you are hesitant about listing a property because you don't know what to exchange into. Why not talk to them about diversifying their investment into a portfolio of DSTs, which may preserve capital, provide steady income, and relieve them of management headaches. They have more options and you get a listing. Another strategy, if you have clients who are tired of being a landlord, and you, sir, mentioned that, what if you're tired of managing these properties, but if you sell, you have a capital gain? That's really the same conversation. Talk to them about diversifying into a portfolio of DSTs, or offered to do a cash flow analysis for them. I think a lot of people have inflated ideas about what they're really making on their investment properties. With DSTs, especially in the multifamily sector, 5% is a pretty common first year projected return. And that's net. That's 5% in the mail. And you don't have to do anything. So if you have a client whose cash flow is less than 5%, or maybe it's only a little bit more than that, they might feel 5% plus not having to do any, be a landlord might be really attractive to them. If you have clients, or if you yourself are more hands-on and active, the DST could be used as a backup property, or it can be used for boot. If you are an advisor, that's an opportunity to really look like a hero. You know, your client comes to you and they're like, man, I found the perfect replacement property, but I have $200,000 left over and I'm going to have to pay taxes. And you tell them, oh no, you know, you can go into a Delaware statutory trust with that money and not have to pay the taxes. They're going to be glad you told them about that. And then with the estate planning topics, we are having more and more conversations with the children of real estate owners, and their parents own 10 properties. And now the kids are thinking, this is what we stand to inherit. And if we do inherit these 10 rental homes, I can guarantee my siblings and I aren't going to agree on what to do with them. So with DSTs, interests can be bequeathed to different entities in different amounts. So if I'm the investor, I get the check today, but I've set my trust up such that when I pass away, each one of my kids gets a third of my distribution. You can also put different DSTs in different people's names. So you have one DST for one child, another DST for another. And then your heirs don't have to worry about managing or selling or deciding whether or not they want to move in to those properties. So it really can simplify things for your estate planning. These DST interests do qualify for the stepped up basis. So Bill kept saying the only way to really avoid the tax bill is to die. Same with DSTs. So benefits to you, of course, now you know, and I'll answer questions. I don't know if you've had anyone ask you yet about DSTs, but like I said, if you're in this industry long enough, people are going to start to ask you, and you can either know how to answer their questions or just look like a deer in the headlights. If you are an agent or a broker, this could be a marketing opportunity. Again, it's a relatively unknown option. Hopefully you see how you might get the listing or how you can save an exchange on the brink of failure. And then access. Without a securities license, you yourself cannot offer these, but by getting to know a licensed securities professional, you can have access to these investments for you or for your clients. I will answer questions.
So you have $5,000 to go into a DST. And therefore, however long the DST runs, which is in the book, the information you get as far as and what is a typical 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
So there are one rule of a Delaware statutory trust is that they cannot refinance the loan. So with multifamily, they typically have financing, usually about 54%, with a 10-year due. So the exit strategy for that DST offering, which is in the private placement random, is going to be sell sometime between now and 10 years. If there is no loan that's due in 10 years, it might be a little bit different, but it's very common to see the 10-year due. Historically, the average holding period has been 6 to 7 years. That's just based on the hundreds of DSTs that have gone full cycle. It can be less. It can be more. So we do consider these illiquid. When that property is sold, you are then eligible for another 1031 exchange, and you have all the same options as you did before you got into a DST. You can roll into another or more DSTs, or you can go back into any other type of like-kind real estate.
Oh, crap. I had something. I can't remember the... yeah, we'll come back. Okay.
Question. Do you participate with any of the appreciation? So if it's 5% cash flow, do you get a percentage of the sale proceeds?
So if in the example I gave of a $20 million property and you put you bought $500,000 worth of real estate, you're a 2.5% owner. When that property is sold, there may be closing costs. One company like Inland, they will not take a closing cost if you do not get back your original investment. But there might be closing costs. That net sales price, you'll get 2.5% of that.
And just to be clear, so if you're 1031, you still have to use an intermediary like asset preservation to handle the 1031 portion.
All the same rules of a 1031 exchange apply. I will say, thinking about deals going full cycle, the slide had mentioned that the average first year return for DSTs last year was 5.6%. In multifamily, it's not typically quite that high. But because we have seen, and we have a lot of historical data from deals that have gone full cycle, if you account for appreciation, annual or average rate of return, including appreciation, is more low double digits.
Can you clarify? So when you're rolling over your both your debt and your equity out of a 1031, how do you account for the debt portion?
It's just a matter of what your numbers are and your needs. So some DSTs are all cash. There's no debt. So if you're coming out of an exchange and you don't have any debt and you don't want to take advantage of leverage, you can go into an all-cash DST. We have some DSTs with a very high loan-to-value ratios, and those are for unique situations. We have a client right now who's in an exchange. He had $700,000 debt. He used all of his cash to buy another replacement property, an industrial property, of which he is the sole owner. If he doesn't replace that $700,000 cash, or debt, he has something like a $200,000 tax bill. So there is a very highly leveraged DST. It's about 75%. He's going to come in out of pocket with about $80,000 cash. It's 75% loan to value. So he's going to get $700,000 of debt for a total acquisition of $700,000 plus his $80,000 cash. So for $80,000 cash, he has avoided a $200,000 tax bill. So we do have some people come to us simply for their debt needs. Did that answer your question?
So what if you get into a DST and you think, oh, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to buy, what I'm going to do with it. So I think I'll probably, like you said, it's pretty illiquid. So I think I'm going to hold it for the 6 or 7 years until they go full cycle. But then something happens and you need to get your money out. What's that situation like? Can you get it out? How easy is it? Is there any tax implications?
If you take your money out of an exchange or out of a DST at any time, then you are responsible for taxes because the 1031 exchange is just deferring. Your share in a DST is transferable legally. You can transfer it to someone else. You can sell it to someone else. There is no secondary market at this time. So you would be responsible for finding someone to buy those shares. You do have resources. You could come to me. I obviously have people calling in 1031 exchanges. These sponsors might be available to help, but what is your share worth at that point? And if you are trying to get out, there's sort of a sense of urgency. People might hardball you on what they pay you for your interests. So we really do, when we're doing our sort of suitability assessment, we are understanding what your timeline is and what your liquidity needs are. And don't forget that you can do a partial exchange. If you think you want access to cash sooner, you can take some cash out of your exchange. You do pay taxes. Or if you're in a portfolio of DSTs, say 4, they're going to sell at different points. You don't know when. It's going to be 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 7 years. But it is likely you're going to have rolling liquidity events, at which point you have the opportunity to decide if you want to take the cash out and pay taxes or take that cash and buy a more traditional property or roll into another DST.
So I'm a little new at this, but are a lot of DSTs invested in real estate syndications like multifamily syndications where there's a 70-30 split? Or just multifamily syndications?
I'm not sure I understand the questions.
So yeah. So are DSTs are multifamily syndications branched within DSTs?
Yes.
Okay.
So DSTs were created. They are just a legal entity for holding real estate. It's a trust. It's managed on behalf of the beneficiaries. They were created with the IRS to give clients, investors more options in a 1031 exchange. Any type of like-kind property can be held in a Delaware statutory trust. You don't see farmland, but conceivably farmland, apartments, industrial, self-storage, any type of asset that is for investment purposes, a sponsor can put that into a trust.
Okay. Are they typically one trust, one asset, or are there multiple assets in one trust?
It is most common to see one asset in one trust, but it's not uncommon to see several properties in one DST. For example, Inland sometimes comes out with multifamily portfolios, and there might be 4 properties in that. They might be 4 properties in one area like Denver, or it might be 4 properties spread out across the country. And that is a way to get diversified within one DST. But it is more common, in my experience, to see one property in a DST at a time.
Hi. So I had a couple questions about the rate of return.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one was, I guess you were saying it was low double digits. What you would expect? Is that a before tax or after tax number?
Before.
That's a before tax
So
number?
that's a great
Okay.
perspective if you're considering your tax yield advantage,
Okay.
which is unique to you.
Yeah. So that's good. The second question is, in getting that data for the rate of return, what time period, when you get that average return, over what time period was that?
So Inland has had, as of recently, I believe 94 DSTs go full cycle. The average rate of return, or the annual rate of return for their multifamily properties that went full cycle between 2004 and 2018, because 2004 is when DST started, I think was close to 12%.
Do you help us to create a DST if we want to create one?
I don't, but there are lawyers in town who I know advise on that. It's expensive, I do believe, but I've asked that question to them before. Do you think you'll see more entrepreneurial people take advantage of this opportunity? And I don't understand all the intricacies of forming a DST. I don't think it's easy, and I don't think it's cheap.
So 2 questions. One, how would I compare this to a client that's looking for, say, triple net property? It seems like it's pretty similar, but yet it also seems like it can be quite a bit different in that you don't have any control over the management side or anything like that. Can you elaborate on that?
Triple net properties, depending on what you're looking at, can be expensive. So depending on how much money they have in their exchange, they might not get the benefit of diversification if they go into a single triple net property. So they have all their eggs in one basket. You are right with the triple net property. They maintain management, but it's relatively low management because the tenant is doing all the day-to-day work. But I think diversification is the big advantage, but also the returns. And Patrick, my partner, does a lot of triple net sourcing also. If you're looking for a triple net property with a credit tenant, what are the cap rates? What's the return your client is getting? And how does that compare to 5%?
Another question along that same line, I'll have one more, is I apologize, how was I going to say that? When you say that there's no cash calls, so you don't have any cash calls, and you have this portfolio that's prepackaged, so you kind of know what it's doing already, right? You can see your numbers already that's in the portfolio, in the memorandum. But things change, right? Mm-hmm. So next year, your major tenant, just happened to be Sears, and now they're gone, right? So what happens when that shortfall? Obviously, you're going to share in a loss, maybe, but I don't understand how that happens if there's no ability for a cash call.
So they have. It is important that their projections be reasonable, and that is something we are analyzing when we're looking at the investment. Is how are they anticipating? Well, if it's a triple net property, that's a little bit different. What is the lease, right? With multifamily, you don't run the risk of losing all your tenants, right? And it's also easier to adjust your rents to market rate.
Boom! If you had the shale oil boom and all of a sudden they stop oil coming out of the ground, then yes, you could lose half your tenants. So what happens when that property goes negative in operational costs versus and management fees?
So that did happen to people in 2008, 2009. So in 2004, when DSTs first started, leading up to about 2008, you started with a few sponsors, you had about 40. After 2008, I think you had 6. Inland and Pasco were doing DSTs then. They were well capitalized, so they could come out of pocket to pay debt, to pay the financing. You might not be getting any cash flow during that time period, but you're not going to lose the property. So being well capitalized is an important consideration. They have reserve accounts, and that's in the private placement memorandum. So they'll talk about any major work they think needs to be done, and they'll have a reserve account for that. They could use some of those reserves to supplement cash flow if they needed to.
Vindicated is that they could go out of business.
Or Patrick.
Yes, it's possible. Like there's a DST in Texas, right? Texas is the center of the shale oil boom, as you know. So if I had somebody with $1 million, I might, because that property has a high starting rate of 6 3/4. But I wouldn't put all my clients' money right in that deal. I'm going to, and as far as the retail with Sears, if I put somebody into a retail property with a Sears, I would be sued. So there are DSTs that are available that have a portfolio of single tenant properties. I would not sell that to one of my clients. My specialty is single tenant properties. I know every one of them and what the leases are and all that. What we recommend to our clients right now is multifamily and diversify. So nobody has a crystal ball. But if you're diversified and you have that one property, for some reason, it went from 94% occupancy, and most of these have debt service coverage that's in the neighborhood of 2 to 2.5 to 1. So they're not highly leveraged. The chances of that property actually going away or being foreclosed on with the good sponsors, it's not 0, but it's close to 0. So I love that question because we love to diversify people. We love multifamily right now, medical office, and perhaps some self-storage. But I would not put a client in any kind of a retail deal right now. There might be an exception, but no, they scare me.
Mm-hmm.
As a real estate broker, when I'm bringing you a client that could have bought a property and I could have been paid a commission, how do I get compensated for bringing you a client?
The compensation there is that you have a happy client. Without a securities license, we are legally prohibited from sharing any or paying a referral. It's up to you to serve your client. And we always, when we're collaborating with the broker, that is your relationship for you.
Series 7? What kind of license do I need?
For Delaware Statutory Trusts, which are private placement programs, that's a 63. And 22 and a 63. I don't think it's all that. I mean, I did it. I'll tell you what's the hardest part about having this license is maintaining compliance. You'd have to work with my same broker dealer. I do highly recommend my broker dealer.
And the way, well, here's the thing. If you're a real estate broker and you're finding people single tenant properties, let's say they sell a property for $3 million and you find the perfect replacement property for 2.8, and you don't want them to pay that tax on that 200,000, we're here for you. Okay. You sell that property for $3 million and you're out looking for replacement properties, and you get down to day 44 and you find out that in that single tenant deal, there was a cancellation clause or a substitution clause or some onerous clause. We're here for you. The situation that Jamie talked about a little while ago where the guy was replacing $700,000 in debt, that deal came from a real estate broker. So that broker found the replacement property for the client, paid all cash for that, but still had $700,000 in debt he had to replace. Now, that broker could have just shut his mouth and cost his client $200,000. Or he could have said, hey, I got a solution for you. And so it depends on what kind of broker you want to be, really. If you want to be seen as creative and client-focused, there's times where we're going to benefit and, financially, and you're not, but your client's going to benefit. At the same time, we may have situations that we need to bring to you. So it works both ways, but there's a lot of situations where you're honestly going to find that by serving your client, you're really serving yourself and looking really, really on top of it, where the other broker might not.
So what happens to the tax benefits that you had when you hold your property directly, your rental property? You can have depreciation. Can you depreciate this?
Yes. And you will get a profit loss statement, which will show your percentage of qualifying depreciation.
Okay. And does it depend on your prior, as we mentioned before, on your prior depreciation?
Yes.
Okay.
Your basis
Yeah.
carries forward.
Okay.
The only way to increase that is to buy more real estate.
Okay.
So you could go into a DST with some higher debt than you need to replace. In that case, you are buying more real estate and your basis would go up. And so you'd have more to depreciate.
Hi. Okay. So I'm thinking about this, and my wife and I are a little bit worried that maybe we're getting close to the top of the real estate cycle. There might. Okay. So it was interesting is when you were talking about that that DSTs have been around since 2004, which means you lived through the 2008 cycle. And it looks like from what you're talking about, you have a strategy where you're focused pretty heavily on cash flow. You're trying to do kind of a value investing kind of strategy. So, and to me, that sounds like it's a good thing to do if there's a downturn, but that's just a guess on my part. So I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, I wouldn't be, but if, when you compare the properties that you were buying that went through this recession versus, I don't know, what the average investor's doing, that during this time, I mean, did using the investments that were in the DST, were the investors maybe a little bit more protected than the average investor in this downturn?
Well, I think it's worth taking into consideration what these assets are. And these assets are institutional quality. So it is not a rental home. It's not a 3-unit condo. They are assets that are needed by insurance companies and pensions and endowments and REITs. So there is that market for them regularly. I think the other thought again comes back to the power of diversification and not having your eggs all in one basket. None of these, an asset being in a Delaware statutory trust does not exempt it from all the standard risks of real estate investing, but you can minimize them through diversification. I do also think that these companies as property managers, are very sophisticated with the multifamily. You know, they use the same kind of rent software that airlines use to determine airline prices. So they're really tuned in to maximize rent. They can lower other expenses by having solid relationships with insurance companies, or they'll offer renters insurance to their tenants, or dog walking services to try to increase rent. So I think the quality of the asset does help minimize some of that risk. Yes.
Righty. Any more questions?
Okay, now I understand that when you go out of a 1031 and into a new property, you're supposed to keep the same name, correct?
The same
So if you have-
legal entity that relinquishes the property must buy the new property.
So if you have John or Jane Doe Trust or LLC, it goes into a Delaware trust with the same name.
Yes.
Now, let's say you want to split that up 4 ways. You have to get different names for it, or how does that work?
Are you talking about for estate planning?
In heirs.
So you would decide how your LLC, how those assets are distributed
So
with your trust attorney.
So you mentioned that there's going to be a step-up basis. So let's say you figure you might die in 10 years. Is it possible to buy into one that's going to be like probably sold in 3 years, like a bond? You know, you can buy bonds that's going to be due in 3 years and stuff. Does that happen?
There isn't a way of knowing exactly when these are going to be sold. Well, if there's a loan that's due in 10 years, it's approximately going to be sold within 10 years. Sometimes they have more detailed exit strategies, but they're really trying to increase the value and sell when it's the best time to sell.
So could a person buy into one that's got a 10-year balloon that's been in existence for 7 years?
No, because when equity sells out, and I gave the slide, on average, it's 156 days, that offering is closed. They cannot...
To sell their share.
Yeah, so you could talk to her.
But it is possible.
Sure, yes. Yes. All right, any other questions?
That was him.
Well, keep our information handy. We have investors and advisors call all the time just to strategize with us, just to say, hey, how does this sound? And we'd be happy to have those conversations with you. I don't expect you to memorize everything or know everything today. So please keep our information handy and call us if you have questions. Yes.
All righty. Let's hear it for Jamie. That was awesome. Like I said, the more you know, this is just another tool to have in your tool belt. Like I said, if you have a boot, personally, we've run into that situation where we couldn't cover an entire exchange. So knowing this exists is huge. All right, we just have a little bit more here before we finish up. Anybody have any wins since the last time we met? Anybody do any deals? Want to come up and share? Well, let's hear about it.
So I recently bought a property because the seller of the property was going to have to do an eviction on her daughter. And so instead of evicting her daughter, I bought the property and then I evicted the daughter. So that worked out pretty good.
Awesome. All righty. That's a great strategy. Anybody else have any wins? Nobody's done a deal since last time? You guys got to get out there and start hustling. Any pitches? Anybody got a deal to pitch?
I'm looking for a roofer.
A roofer? If anybody's got a roofer, talk to Richard. Alrighty, resources. Anybody reading any good books? Any good? You guys are tired now. That was a lot of content tonight. Oh yeah, I love the 4-hour work week. So the basic concept of that is lifestyle design, and that's what, financial freedom through real estate gives you. So my pick of the week is Sell or Be Sold. It's also going to be the book for the book club coming up on May 6th. A lot of people in the real estate game don't know how to sell. Grant Cardone is one of the best salespeople out there. So if you want to learn how to sell, awesome book. I suggest you check it out. If you want to hang out with other nerds that like reading books, come to the Real Estate Roundtable Book Club. Alrighty, if you haven't already joined the Facebook page, we have a Facebook group. All the content about upcoming events, all the live stream video is on there. I've found some deals on there, so please join our community. We're also on Meetup. Also YouTube. So YouTube has a unique feature. We need to get to 100 subscribers before we can get into their ecosystem where we'll be searchable. So we're well on our way. All the content that we record here, plus contributed content by our speakers, for example, Neil Bao is starting to contribute content to our YouTube channel as well. So there'll be these slides will have the links in it, and I'll put the links in the follow-up email as well. So coming up next time, we're going to have Ryan Nickel. Ryan Nickel is probably one of the most creative deal finders. He's coached a lot of students over the years, and what he found, a lot of people can identify a good deal or they can get good leads, but they have trouble closing them. So he's put together a whole new talk about how to close those deals. So if you're a wholesaler, flipper, single family buy and hold looking for distressed property, don't miss that one. And then our next multifamily will be on May 20th. As I mentioned, Neil Bao was awesome. He'll probably come to our group maybe 3 times a year. He's based out of Fremont, but we have local multifamily guys like Mike Goby contributed content. We have a section where we have deal show and tell. So it's just a great time to hang out with your multifamily people. And after that is Memorial Day, so we won't have a meeting after that. So with that, here's me. I'm Eric Blue. I do deals. I've got private money. I'm looking for off-market deals as well. Like to do some local flips. I've been meaning to talk to Mike about buying in Tennessee. Anybody have any aha moments? Oh, Josh.
Hi, this is Josh. Aha moment I've had is the real education you get is in the real world, not from school, not from teachers telling you what to do. Read this chapter, read that chapter. It's a networking you get. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. It's a networking you get from events like this, watching videos watching the replay after this, just your own searching of knowledge and education, reading books, everything like that. Because schools only teach you what they want you to know.
Awesome. I got to hand it to Josh. He's one of our youngest members of the group. He shows up consistently. He makes an effort. I think he just recently dropped out of school, so that really hits. So he's doing it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the content that you get, and that's why we're so proud of the Real Estate Roundtable, having free admission to get access to this awesome content. And there's one thing to make money, but learning how to protect it, I love the idea. I would much rather put it into a DST than ever paying the taxes on it. My dad was a huge fan. I grew up my whole life learning how to tax advantage everything we did. And I just adding another tool to your tool belt, just having another strategy in your back pocket to know what to do to not to pay taxes is my aha moment. So really appreciate it. So with that being said, that's the end of the program. Go make some good things happen. I think Jamie's going to be hanging around for a little while to answer questions. If you didn't get her card, she's got a stack of them over there. Also, if you came in late and didn't get a chance to check in, put your email in there. We will send out all the slides, both Bill's, Jamie's, and the ones from the round table. There'll be links to the video. And you'll also get a notification of upcoming meetups. So we'll see you again on May 13th for Ryan Nickel. Thank you for coming. And if anybody wants to help and clean up, we'd appreciate it.